In this video, I will talk about Machiavelli's views on what makes a great leader. I think it's important for me to first state that leaders come in many different personality types and forms, that no leader is exactly the same as another, and they all have different ways to put their vision into action. But despite this, there are a few qualities that are important for all leaders to have. To be a great leader, you have to be someone of action. Without action, it's impossible to achieve progress. Humans can sometimes get stuck in decision paralysis or analysis paralysis. They feel as if they're making progress by constantly reviewing aspects of their plan, but they don't realize that the progress of their plan comes from following it through. Machiavelli says, "How we live is so different from how we ought to live, that he who studies what ought to be done rather than what is done will learn the way to his downfall rather than to his preservation." The first part of the quote is so significant. How we live is so different from how we ought to live. Machiavelli is talking about a perception versus reality conundrum, that at times we can get lost in the fabrication of our own mind, believing situations and scenarios that it constructs, failing to realize that the only way to actually perceive reality is to live it. To actually feel and see the reality of the world, we have to experience it, not in our mind, but outside of it, and that we will find that it's a lot different to what we imagined. He talks in such extremities of the fact that if we don't start to realize this within ourselves, it will lead to our downfall. As a leader, you have to know when it's time to put action into your plans, that we can get caught up in the fantasy of believing that everything goes a certain way, and regardless of whether that happens or not, the only way to find out is by doing it. Another attribute that is required of a great leader is to be bold. A leader has to be the forefront of an ideology, the spearhead, the tip of the arrow. He has to be the man at the front of the charge, because he is the one who all other components rely upon. We have many examples of this from leaders of the past, and we also have many examples of what not to do from people who were assumed to be the leader. One great leader of Machiavelli's time was a man by the name of Lorenzo de' Medici, or otherwise known as Lorenzo the Magnificent. He was the ruler of the Florentine Republic during the Italian Renaissance and the head of a banking dynasty. Lorenzo proved that through times of despair, the boldness of his action would always result in his triumph. He was the victim of an assassination attempt, which resulted in the death of his brother, in which he ruthlessly hunted down the conspirators and ultimately wiped them away from the history of Florence. He led the Medici Bank away from looming insolvency by the hands of his unfortunate father to times of greater wealth and prosperity than ever before. He was the patron to many of the most famous artists to this date, with the likes of Da Vinci, Botticelli, and Michelangelo all being able to pursue their creative arts due to him. Lorenzo wasn't afraid of pursuing his actions. He wasn't afraid to put his plans into place. He prepared, he was bold in his actions, and he received the fruit of his work. An attribute that's not commonly discussed as something that a leader would require is someone who is able to change with the trends of society and the world. It's important to remember that the cultures that we try to cling on to were once revolutionary in their own respect, during a time period where that way of living life was required of them. As time moves forward, it's important to leave behind these cultures and progress towards the attainment of a new type of revolution. Machiavelli quotes, "A man who is used to acting in one way never changes. He must come to ruin when the times, in changing, are no longer in harmony with his ways." The main point to highlight here is the ruin aspect of this quote. Machiavelli is talking about the change within oneself, the change within the leader, that for him to stand any chance of attaining success, he has to learn to reinvent himself, to ruin himself, when it's necessary and called for. Think deeply about this. What are some qualities that you can change about yourself? How can you stick with the times? How can you reinvent your personality to appeal more to the world now? It's important to be in constant assessment of these questions and to make sure that we never remain stagnant. As when time passes in the world, you don't want to be the one left behind, the one at the forefront of the future. Having an eagerness to learn is one of the most important attributes for a leader to have. Learning from great leaders of the past, reading up on your field in books, and even making sure that you are aware throughout all environments. If you are walking through a city, learn from the actions and impulses of the people around you. Look at their facial expressions and see how they react to certain things. Try to learn human behavior from being in and amongst it. Be completely involved in a conversation. Think about replies that the other person is thinking to give to you. You want to see how the other person will react. You need to have patience and temperance in situations where people act on their impulse. This will teach you a lot about human behavior. Universities and colleges are a good place to see what the thoughts and ideals are of the current generation. How they act, how they dress, think about how they react to controversial topics. You can learn a lot about how to appeal to these people who will eventually form the main part of society in the future. Machiavelli says, "A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who are most excellent, so that if he does not attain to their greatness, at any rate, he will get some tinge of it." So far, we have discussed that action, boldness, the ability to change with the times, and having an eagerness to learn are all important attributes for every leader to have. That Machiavelli believes that a leader without these qualities is no leader. There is one more quality that I'm going to discuss, which I believe is the most important quality of them all. One that if a leader possesses, it's hard to see how they can be stopped, unless by the untimely nature of human mortality or by the undoing of this quality. Machiavelli quotes, "The best fortress which a prince can possess is the affection of his people." It's important to be seen as someone who cares for others, that the leader is not so obsessed in the creation and pursuit of their own personal desires that the work they are doing is in the benefit for the rest of society around them as well. The followers of this man will push themselves to the extent of their limits to help him maintain his position in the world and with the fulfillment of his goal. However, the loss of this affection from your followers will cause them to drag you down to the depths of the world with a determination that even your greatest enemy doesn't possess. Therefore, this attribute can be the cause of your success, but also the cause of your undoing. Once you have captured the hearts of your followers, be wary to let it go. This leadership masterclass video inspired by Machiavelli may not seem relevant to all types of people, but the governing of our own mind is a form of leadership, and we have to be able to adopt these qualities if you want your mind and your will to coincide with each other. One final quote that I'd like to end with: "He who wishes to be obeyed must learn how to command." Thank you for watching. If you found this useful, hit the like button, but if you didn't, hit the dislike button. I'll be adding more episodes to this and actually useful self-mastery series within the next few days and weeks, so subscribe to stay tuned.